Okay, let's unpack this. What a whirlwind 28 hours around September 17th, 2025. Seriously, if you blinked, you might have missed a major global shift or, a pretty significant domestic development. We're talking about a lot more than just your average news cycle here. Our mission today, like always, is to take a deep dive into your stack of sources. We want to pull out the most important nuggets of knowledge, the real insights. Think of this as your shortcut to being genuinely well informed, giving you not just the facts, but maybe some surprising context and helping connect those dots. We've really tried to hone in on the events that offer the most insight into, well, where things might be heading. From geopolitical tremors to economic ripples, social flashpoints, we'll explore the interconnected threads of what was a really, really busy day. So buckle up. We'll begin with an intense look at escalating conflicts and some surprising new alliances, things that could really reshape regional dynamics. Your sources paint a pretty stark picture from Gaza.
On September 17th, Israel significantly intensified its bombardment of Gaza City. We're talking tanks, jets, naval vessels, the works.
Yeah, the reports from that day detailed, I think, at least 37 Palestinian deaths.
Yeah.
And a government order for nearly 1 million residents to evacuate. Just imagine.
1 million people, leading to chaotic scenes, I assume.
Exactly. Amidst ongoing strikes, there was an evacuation corridor announced for 48 hours, but, many residents were hesitant to flee, understandably.
And this escalation, it didn't come out of nowhere, right?
No, absolutely not. What's really striking here is how these actions follow Israel's September 9th strike in Doha. That strike targeted Hamas leadership, and it was widely condemned.
Yeah.
The UN rights chief called it highly destabilizing.
Ah, okay. So that hardened diplomatic positions.
It really did. And then on the very same day, September 17th, an independent UN commission released a pretty explosive report
Go on.
declaring that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza.
Wow, genocide. That's an incredibly strong term from a UN body.
It is. They cited systematic attacks on civilians, severe restrictions on humanitarian aid, and policies causing mass displacement.
That's a momentous claim. What does a declaration like that actually mean in practical terms? Does it have immediate legal teeth, or is it more diplomatic pressure?
That's a great question. It's important to understand this isn't like a legally binding ruling from an international court like the ICC, but it absolutely carries significant diplomatic weight. Huge weight.
How so?
Well, it influences how nations might vote in the UN, potentially impacting future resolutions or humanitarian aid structures, and it definitely adds pressure.
We saw that play out immediately, didn't we, with Spain?
Exactly. Spain canceled a major arms deal worth nearly $825 million for Israeli rocket launchers. They explicitly cited concerns over Israeli conduct.
And Netanyahu's response?
He pledged to build a more independent arms industry. Meanwhile, Israeli officials just outright rejected the UN Commission's findings. It shows how fast things escalate the international pressure of the national responses.
Okay, shifting focus a bit, but staying in that sort of geopolitical realm, a major tremor in the Gulf, Saudi Arabia and Pakistan. What happened there on the 17th?
Right. A really significant development. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif signed a strategic mutual defense agreement in Riyadh.
Mutual defense. So like NATO's Article 5. Attack on one is an attack on both.
Precisely. That level of commitment. These nations had close security ties before, obviously, but nothing like this formal NATO-style mutual defense clause.
That feels big.
It is. People are calling it a watershed moment, and for good reason. If you connect the dots, this came right after that Israeli strike in Doha we mentioned. That clearly rattled Gulf capitals.
So a reaction to perceived instability.
Seems like it. Analysts are saying this new pact could be a powerful deterrent to adversaries. But there's a flip side.
Which is?
It also means both countries are now explicitly entangled in each other's conflicts. Think about the implications for, say, India-Pakistan dynamics.
Yeah.
And broader Gulf diplomacy, too. It really redraws some lines on the strategic map. A very different game now.
Absolutely. It definitely raises the stakes. Okay, let's turn to Ukraine. The flow of aid there continues to be just critical. On September 17th, President Zelensky announced some positive news on that front.
Yeah, he announced that Ukraine would receive Patriot and HIMARS missiles. These are the, really crucial systems. And apparently, they're in the first shipment financed under a new allied mechanism after the U.S. cleared the administrative hurdles.
So Kyiv's prioritizing air defense and long-range fires, and it looks like some are finally on the way.
This aid is absolutely crucial. Vital, really, for stabilizing Ukraine's defenses before the winter campaign kicks in, especially because Moscow's pressure remains intense. Russia's military chief was claiming advances on multiple fronts, which Kiev disputes, of course.
Right.
But the big question here, the really critical one, is will these supplies arrive fast enough and in sufficient volume?
To actually shape the dynamics on the front line.
Yeah.
And maybe give Ukraine more leverage.
Exactly. The battlefield is just grinding on. Every single delivery counts.
And speaking of high-stakes air defense, things got a bit tense near NATO borders too, didn't they, with Poland?
They did. Warsaw revealed new evidence on the 17th about an incident from back on September 9th or 10th. It indicates that a Polish F-16, well, one of its missiles likely malfunctioned during an operation.
An operation to intercept Russian drones.
Correct. And the missile apparently hit a house in Poland.
Wow. Inside Poland.
Inside Poland. Authorities were very quick to emphasize it was fired in defense during that intercept.
Still, that's concerning. Close to the border.
It really underscores the inherent risks, doesn't it?
Yeah.
High-tempo air defense right near NATO territory. What stands out to me here is sort of a dual message from Poland.
How so?
Well, first, they swiftly condemned Russia for the initial incursion that even necessitated the intercept. But then, they also vowed remarkable transparency about their own mishap.
Interesting balance.
Yeah, it's a delicate act. Deterrence towards Russia, but also reassurance at home, especially when public safety is involved so close to a conflict zone.
That transparency is definitely notable in such a, tense environment. Now, for a different kind of international event, President Trump's state visit to the UK, his second one.
Unprecedented, yeah.
It kicked off on September 17th. Lots of royal pomp, Windsor Castle, banquet with King Charles III, the whole deal.
And the UK government really used the moment, didn't they?
They certainly did, trumpeting a record $150 billion in inward investment commitments, mostly tech, life sciences, advanced manufacturing.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting, I think.
The other side of the coin.
Exactly. Despite all that pageantry, the investment fanfare, large anti-Trump protests absolutely flared up across London.
Were they significant?
Oh, yeah. Demonstrators were even projecting images onto Windsor Castle itself, images of Trump with Jeffrey Epstein and Prince Andrew.
Wow. Projected onto the castle.
Onto the castle walls. It just vividly showcases that persistent tension in Britain, between the diplomatic theater and very strong public opinion.
So, thorny policy talks ahead once the ceremonies are over?
You have to assume so. It sets up a potentially awkward dynamic once they move from formal statecraft to, well, actual politics. That raw public sentiment isn't just going away.
Okay, let's shift gears now. Bring it back home to the U.S. domestic front. September 17th was a very, very full day here, too. Let's start with economics. The Fed made a move.
Yes, the U.S. Federal Reserve cut its benchmark interest rate by 0.25 percentage points.
Its first cut of the year, right?
That's right. Chair Jerome Powell described it, interestingly, as a risk management step.
Risk management, after months of sort of mixed signals, cool in job growth, but inflation's still sticky.
Exactly. If you connect this to the bigger picture, the Fed is clearly trying to cushion slowing growth, but without, reigniting those price spikes. It's a delicate balance.
But this move, it didn't happen in a vacuum, did it? There's been talk of political pressure.
Right. And this cut definitely rekindled those broader debates about political pressure on central banks, especially after President Trump had reportedly pressured the Fed for months to cut rates.
So it's not just about the economic numbers.
No, it's a real tightrope walk for the Fed's independence here. That risk management language is key. It serves as crucial institutional defense against accusations of overt political influence.
Setting a precedent, maybe?
Could be. For how future administrations might try to influence monetary policy, it's a very, very sensitive line they're walking.
Okay, that distinction between economic strategy and political influence is critical. And on the same day, a very different, very charged debate was intensifying. Political violence.
Yeah, following the killing of conservative activist Charlie Kirk the previous week.
What happened on the 17th specifically?
Well, officials indicated the White House was preparing an executive order on political violence and hate speech.
Okay. And President Trump?
He announced his intention to label the Antifa movement a terrorist organization.
A domestic group labeled terrorist, that's significant.
Hugely significant. And adding to that, prosecutors in Utah announced they'd seek the death penalty for Tyler Robinson, the accused gunman in Kirk's killing. Reports said he acted out of ideological opposition.
It just throws up this huge question, doesn't it?
Absolutely. How does a democracy respond to violence and extremism without, inadvertently curbing civil liberties or suppressing legitimate dissent?
Is there pushback against these moves?
Oh, yes. More than 120 liberal foundations and advocacy groups put out a joint letter They decried these efforts precisely because they fear it could lead to suppressing dissent.
And then there was the media angle with Jimmy Kimmel.
Right. Here's a surprising fact that shows how fast these cultural flashpoints move now. On September 17th, ABC actually pulled Jimmy Kimmel Live from its schedule.
Pulled it. Why?
It was apparently due to remarks Kimmel made in the aftermath of Kirk's killing. It immediately sparked arguments about double standards, the boundaries of satire.
Wow, that's a big move for a major network.
Yeah.
What does that decision tell us about the current media landscape?
Well, it really highlights how quickly editorial controversies can escalate, right? From social media outrage to actual corporate decision-making, especially in such an incredibly charged political season. And think about the terrorist organization label for a domestic group. If that's implemented, it could grant the government vastly expanded surveillance powers, restrictions on funding, association.
Yeah, huge impact on civil liberties.
Potentially, yes. It's a complex battleground where free speech and public safety collide, and the media becomes just another front line.
Okay, moving from that charged atmosphere to the sometimes equally fraught world of government funding, any progress on avoiding a shutdown?
Some, yeah. Late on September 17th, House lawmakers advanced a stopgap funding measure, just to keep the government open beyond the end of the month.
Averting immediate disaster, but kicking the can down the road.
Pretty much. It avoided a procedural derailment, but it left a lot of those contentious policy riders unresolved.
So short-term relief.
Yes, but it really underscores this recurring feature of U.S. budget standoffs, doesn't it? Serial brinkmanship. It damages confidence every time.
And speaking of legal and political battles, a significant development for former President Trump in Georgia.
Yes, on the 17th, the Georgia Supreme Court declined to hear an appeal from Fani Willis, the Fulton County DA.
She was the one removed from his election interference case, right?
Correct. And this ruling from the state's highest court effectively pauses, or maybe even ends, that particular case in Georgia.
What's the takeaway there?
Well, it certainly demonstrates the immense obstacles prosecutors can face in pursuing these politically charged cases, and it highlights the deeply partisan reactions these kinds of judicial decisions always provoke.
Also on the 17th, FBI Director Kash Patel was on Capitol Hill.
He was, facing some pretty heated exchanges with Senate Democrats during a Judiciary Committee hearing.
About what specifically?
His oversight of several high-profile probes, the Charlie Kirk assassination investigation, the Jeffrey Epstein case, and also allegations of internal retribution within the FBI.
So ongoing scrutiny of the FBI itself.
Very much so. It brings to light these persistent questions about the FBI's credibility and independence. You hear calls from both sides for more transparency, more nonpartisanship in federal law enforcement. It's a recurring theme.
Let's switch tracks to health policy. Some interesting divergence happening there.
Yeah, on the West Coast. On September 17th, the West Coast Health Alliance, that's California, Oregon, Washington, and Hawaii, they issued recommendations about COVID-19 vaccination.
How did they differ from federal guidance?
They recommended keeping it available for adults and children under certain criteria, which was broader than the narrower federal guidance at the time. California also moved to base its state vaccine policy on independent medical bodies.
What does that signal?
It really highlights how states are maybe reviving these independent review compacts, perhaps partly due to federal leadership shakeups and the ongoing politicized debates around COVID shots, states asserting some independence.
And there was testimony related to the CDC.
Yes. On the same day, former CDC Director Susan Monterez testified. She said that Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. told her changes to the childhood immunization schedule would be made in September.
Without specifying what changes.
Apparently so. And this stoked immediate concerns about, the basis for policymaking. Is it science or something else? Senators from both parties demanded transparency on the process and the evidence behind any potential changes.
Okay. Now, sadly, we have to turn to a tragic event that also unfolded on September 17th in Pennsylvania.
Yes, a devastating event in North Codorus Township, York County. 3 police officers were fatally shot. 2 others were wounded.
Well, doing what?
They were following up on a domestic-related investigation. The shooter was ultimately killed by police.
Just awful. 3 officers lost.
Absolutely tragic. And it immediately reignites these critical debates, doesn't it? About domestic violence interventions, about body armor and training standards for officers, about red flag laws.
A stark reminder of the risks.
A very stark reminder of the rising risks faced by law enforcement.
And one more domestic item, this one concerning Washington, D.C. and youth justice.
Right. The U.S. House passed 2 bills on the 17th related to D.C. crime.
What did they do?
One would allow 14-year-olds to be charged as adults for certain offenses. The other would require mandatory minimum sentences for some youth offenders.
That sounds like a shift towards tougher sentencing.
It is, and critics immediately argued these measures are regressive, that they'll disproportionately affect minority communities.
Well, proponents.
Proponents insist they're necessary to restore public safety in D.C. It really reflects that intensifying debate we see nationwide. Criminal justice reform versus more traditional tough-on-crime policies.
Okay, let's move into our final segment, looking beyond the sort of hard news headlines. Business, environment, culture. Still plenty happened on the 17th. Let's start with tech and business milestones. An IPO.
Yes, cloud security firm Netskope priced its IPO on September 17th, raised roughly $908 million.
That sounds pretty significant for a tech offering this year.
It was one of the larger ones, yeah. And it was seen as a crucial test, really, of the market sentiment after the summer lull and right after that Fed rate cut we talked about amidst all the market volatility.
So how it trades could be a signal.
Definitely. If the shares trade well, it could potentially open an IPO window for other late-stage cybersecurity companies. It would indicate renewed investor appetite for firms that, harden our networks. A key bellwether for the tech sector.
Got it. Staying with tech, but shifting to a familiar issue. TikTok.
Still ongoing, yes. On the 17th, Rep. John Moolenaar, who chairs the House Select Committee on the CCP, voiced some concerns.
About the potential divestiture deal.
Exactly. About reports suggesting the framework might still rely on a ByteDance-linked algorithm.
Meaning it could still be vulnerable.
That's the concern. Potentially leaving the platform vulnerable to Chinese state leverage, even if the ownership is technically U.S.-controlled.
So the devil's really in the technical details.
Absolutely. It illustrates the huge, complex challenges in ensuring verifiable technical isolation for these platforms deemed national security risks. The compromise isn't just ownership. It hinges on things like data localization, who gets access to the code, audit rights. It's a real technological and geopolitical tightrope.
Okay. And a notable resignation in the corporate world. From Ben & Jerry's.
Yes. Jerry Greenfield, one of the co-founders, announced his resignation on September 17th in protest.
Against whom? And why?
Against Unilever, the parent company. He accused them of silencing the company's long-standing activism.
That's fascinating. What's the broader context there?
Well, it reignites that ongoing debate, doesn't it, about the responsibilities of corporations. Should they pursue social justice missions, or should they try to remain apolitical, especially in such a charged political climate? It's a constant tension.
Indeed. Okay, let's look at the environment. Hurricane season had been quiet.
Until the 17th, yeah. Tropical storm Gabrielle formed in the central Atlantic. It ended a rare, unusual lull in the 2025 season.
Any immediate threat?
Not immediately, but forecasters were quick to warn that the ocean waters are still very warm, so rapid intensification is still a possibility.
So the season's not over yet?
Not by a long shot. It's a crucial reminder, really. Even these quiet seasons can turn active very quickly, especially as we hit the climatological peak. Preparedness is essential right through late November.
Another environmental report highlighted ongoing dangers.
Yes, a new report from Global Witness came out. It counted at least 146 land and environmental defenders killed or disappeared last year.
Globally.
And nearly a third of them were indigenous people. It highlighted Colombia, Guatemala, and Mexico as having the highest numbers.
Just shows the risks involved in that kind of activism.
It really underscores the severe risks faced by people protecting biodiversity, fighting climate change, upholding indigenous rights. The report called for much greater legal and political protections for these defenders.
And finally, a cultural farewell. A true icon passed away on September 17th.
Yes, the world mourned the passing of legendary actor and activist Robert Redford at age 89.
Such an incredible career on screen.
Absolutely iconic. But beyond his cinematic achievements, Redford was also celebrated for his really enduring environmental advocacy.
Right, he was involved with the NRDC for a long time.
For decades, yeah. A trustee of the Natural Resources Defense Council, and of course he founded the Sundance Film Festival.
So a huge impact on both the arts and conservation.
Indelible, really. His legacy is truly multifaceted. It reminds us of the power individuals have to shape culture and advocate for critical issues over a lifetime.
So let's try to pull this all together. What does this whirlwind 28 hours truly mean? We've covered global conflicts, new alliances, economic shifts, heated domestic politics, tragic events, cultural moments, all crammed into this narrow window.
Yeah, if we try to connect it all to the bigger picture, it just fundamentally underscores how interconnected these seemingly disparate events really are, doesn't it?
In what way?
Well, you see geopolitical tensions immediately influencing economic decisions, like the potential impact of the Doha strike on the Saudi-Pakistan pact, or the war impacting aid flows. You see domestic politics shaping international relations. Think about the Trump visit protests, or the debates around funding Ukraine.
Right.
It's this constant interplay between global forces and local impacts, and it shows how quickly the news cycle can shift our understanding of the world, if you know where to look for those deeper threads and connections.
It's a powerful reminder, isn't it, of the sheer volume, the complexity of the issues shaping our world, and how a single day, like September 17th, can reveal so much about the larger trends that are constantly at play. So, for you, our listener, thinking about everything we've just unpacked, what single event from this deep dive resonates most strongly with your own daily experience, perhaps? Or maybe your future concerns, and why? How might a single day's headlines reveal a deeper, longer-term trend that maybe you hadn't fully considered before? Keep those thoughts brewing and keep digging into the world around you.